Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to read a short story I wrote called A Gambler Like Me. The flight is delayed at least another hour, according to the notification Carl receives on his new iPhone. He stares at the email for a few seconds, mostly admiring the sleek smartphone in his hand, a perk of his recent promotion, along with first-class travel on the flight that seems like it will never take off. A cacophony of dinging slot machines fills the air as travelers hustle through Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas, and Carl realizes that he didn't do any gambling the whole time he was in town. He orders another round of the seasonal IPA and turns his attention to the TV, where the Dallas Cowboys are taking the field for the second half of their game against the Tennessee Titans. He doesn't follow football very closely. His wife was the one who always insisted that they have a Super Bowl party, mostly so she could make her famous queso dip. His ex-wife, he reminds himself, still getting used to thinking of her that way. The Titans hold a 4-point lead, and the sports betting app on Carl's phone is giving the Cowboys nearly a 2-1 payout if they pull off the win. The camera zooms in on a Dallas quarterback warming up on the sidelines, a determined look in his eyes as he tosses tight spirals. Carl places a $200 bet on this stolid young man to lead the comeback. Titans 17, Cowboys 13. Underdog mentality is familiar to Carl. His first few years at McKinnon Industries were riddled with late nights, long weeks, and little recognition from his superiors. He was one of dozens of engineers from prestigious schools, and unlike many of his colleagues, he hadn't registered a significant achievement. Then one night, the Mortonville Bridge collapse slid across his desk. An 18-wheeler and 2 cars had plunged into a river when the aging infrastructure gave way. Carl was tasked with rebuilding a bridge with structural integrity that would restore confidence to the people of Mortonville. He embraced the challenge. He worked even longer hours, piling mountains of crumpled designs into a trash can next to his desk. He punched numbers into his calculator until his fingers and his head were sore. He skipped meals and social engagements. He lost weight and eventually lost his wife. But when the numbers finally added up, he'd found a new way to structure bridges that can safely hold nearly double the weight previously thought possible. The Mortonville Bridge was rebuilt bigger and better than anyone could have imagined, launching Carl on a tour around the world to share his groundbreaking design. The quiet engineer had emerged as an innovator in his field. The eyes of an industry were fixated on him. Carl watches as the Dallas quarterback drops back to pass and slings a perfect ball into his wide receiver's waiting hands for a touchdown. The receiver spikes the ball and shakes his hips in celebration. Carl sips his beer and claps his hands. Cowboys 20, Titans 17. At the other end of the bar, Tim pounds his fist on the counter and runs his fingers through his thinning hair. He twists his wedding ring, a habit he's adopted in nervous moments. As if losing a couple $1,000s at the blackjack table during his brother's Las Vegas bachelor party wasn't enough of a wake-up call. He'd been talked into betting on the favored Titans to win tonight's game. His brother's best friend, Willie, had assured Tim that the Tennessee defense was too tough for the young Cowboy offense to handle. "It's a lock," he'd said. "Put a few hundred down and make back some of your loss this weekend." Now, down by 3, it feels like a lock that any 2-bit thief would have no trouble picking. Tim knows he shouldn't be betting at all, that he should be saving every penny he has for the birth of his first child in 3 months. When they found out they were having a girl, his wife insisted on calling her Noelle. "She's not due until several weeks after Christmas," Tim reminded her. "I know," she replied. "I just love the name." And so, that became just about all they ever talked about. What color should we paint Noelle's room? What kind of car seat will be safest for Noelle? How much will college cost by the time Noelle turns 18? Whatever the final tuition bill, Tim's about to be $300 shorter if the Titans' offense doesn't click into gear soon. The Tennessee quarterback drops back to pass. He rolls out of the pocket. A linebacker barrels toward him and he slings a wild pass down the sideline. The Cowboys' cornerback reaches up, secures the ball, and taps his toes on the green grass to secure the interception. Tim groans in frustration and glares down the bar at some jackass celebrating the game's turn of events. The jackass seems to notice Tim's despair and raises a glass to him. "A lot of ball still to play," Carl exclaims before taking a sip from his raised glass. "You from Tennessee?" "No, Tim manages to reply as the Cowboys' offense takes the field in scoring position. Ah, so you're just a gambler like me then, eh? Tim tries to tune out this apparent antagonist, choosing instead to antagonize himself by watching the Cowboys' running back dart through the defensive line for a first down. You heading to Seattle too? Carl asks. Looks like we're stuck for at least another hour. Minneapolis, Tim replies, but also stuck. Excuse me, Carl gets the bartender's attention. Get my friend down here another one of whatever he's drinking, would you? I'm fine, thank you, Tim replies curtly. Aw, come on, Carl says. I won't try to talk to you or anything. I just know how much a stiff drink can help when things aren't going your way. Some nights, 2 fingers of whiskey was the only thing that could wind Carl down for the night after he'd spent all day obsessing over his work. After his wife left, it was sometimes the only thing that got him through the day. He sticks to beer now and stays out of trouble, for the most part. The Cowboys' offense stalls out and the kicker comes in to add 3 points to their lead. Cowboys 23, Titans 17. Tim's hand shakes as he sips the last of his beer. Fine, he says. I'll take another one of these and a shot of Jameson, if he's buying. That's the spirit, Carl exclaims, no pun intended. The money doesn't even matter, Tim mutters, mostly to himself, but loud enough for Carl and the bartender to overhear. It would just be nice to win something. This is mostly true, though he'd sure like to chip away at his financial losses from the weekend. But one way or another, he knows he'll be able to support Noel. His job as a middle school vice principal pays well enough, as does his wife's science teacher salary. They both have comprehensive health insurance. They get their nights and weekends and summers off. Noel will get no shortage of homework help or family camping trips or dentist appointments or back-to-school outfits. She'll be fine. They have enough. No, what this evokes in Tim is something deeper. It's a feeling from his youth, from pickup games of football at recess. He was picked last at the playground, and now he can't pick a winning football team. It's primal, emasculating frustration that plagues him as the Titans take the field hoping to retake the lead. He wants to feel the triumph of victory in some form of competition. It's not about the money. The Titans throw a pass downfield for a gain of 30 yards. Tim claps his hands in celebration. The money doesn't matter, eh? Carl says with a chuckle, sipping his beer. Yeah, I told myself that for a while, too. The money never mattered to Carl until he got it. When he was first starting out, first putting in those late nights, it was all for a love of the work. It was to make a difference, to build better, safer bridges than anyone had before. Then he started collecting checks. And since the money wasn't doing any good just piling up in his account, he converted that balance to nicer clothes, a nicer car, meals at nicer restaurants, a nice watch, a bigger television, a more comfortable mattress, a 90-gallon fish tank with tropical fish from 3 continents. Anything he could think of was now attainable. Yet now, having attained nearly all he could think of, he was bored by material things, and the only thrill left was increasing the numbers in his bank account and the bills in his wallet. A Tennessee running back cuts to the outside, juking 2 Cowboy defenders on a long run that takes him inside the 10-yard line. Tim pumps his fist while taking a big gulp of his beer. 2 plays later, that same running back runs into the end zone, and Tim's too lost in celebratory relief to even notice the woman slide onto the stool between him and Carl. But Carl noticed. Titans 24, Cowboys 23. Her silky brown hair bounces on the shoulders of her blue blazer as she huffs in frustration. Can I get a double martini, please? She asks the bartender, crossing her legs with authority. She takes her phone out of her Louis Vuitton purse and pulls it up to her ear. Hello? Yeah, there's another delay. I have no idea when I'm getting out of here. I can't imagine I'll get to Minneapolis till well after midnight, and I'm practically in the last row, so it will take me about an hour to get off the plane when I finally do. Okay, I'll keep you posted. Bye. Carl can't keep his eyes off her. He's drawn not just to her shapely legs and plump lips, but her sense of command and self-assurance. Despite only having been in a room with her for 1 minute, he'd trust her to drive him along a narrow road through an ice storm. What seat are you? Tim asks the woman, a little louder than necessary. 32C, she replies. Looks like we'll be neighbors, if we ever actually get out of here. I'm 32B. Tim jerks his head back toward the television just in time to see the Cowboys quarterback take off running for a first down. They're moving the ball again as the 4th quarter nears the halfway mark. Fingers crossed it's soon, the woman mutters, not really making any eye contact with Tim. Don't worry, Carl chimes in. By the time he finishes that drink, he'll be out cold. You won't hear from him the whole flight. The woman looks over at Tim, trying to understand the relationship between the two men, but he's too absorbed in the game to notice, so she looks back at Carl and smiles. The bartender comes over with her martini. That's on me, Carl says, waving his hand for her to put away her credit card. She obliges with a shrug. You know, my company gives me a per diem, she says. It wouldn't have cost me anything. Sounds like the next one's on you, then. I'm Sandra, she says with a smile. Carl. The Cowboys receiver runs in motion and takes the handoff on a jet sweep, dodging two would-be tacklers before diving into the corner of the end zone. Tim groans, burying his face in his hands. Cowboys 30, Titans 24. What's with him? Sandra asks. He's got money on the game, I think, Carl replies with a shrug. So, what do you do? Sandra goes on to tell Carl that she's a risk analyst. Tim overhears and wishes he could have consulted with Sandra before the game started. With the clock winding down, it seems the Titans will have one more chance to drive down the field to tie or win the game. The kick returner takes a knee in the end zone to bring the ball out to the 25-yard line. I had to give a presentation to an auditorium full of software executives, Sandra tells Carl. I've done so many of these, but I still get nervous every time. I'm sure no one could tell, Carl assures her. You want to hear a trick I developed for when I get nervous during a presentation? What, picture everyone in the audience naked? Nah, that never works. What I do is think of something that gets me really angry. Sandra's eyes widen. Really? Why? Because anger trumps fear. When you're pissed off, you'll forget everything you're afraid of. The Titans quarterback rolls out to his right and throws an errant pass that hits the fingertips of a Cowboy defender, falling to the ground. This brings up fourth down, and Tim looks helplessly up at the television, feeling both anger and fear as Tennessee plots its last-ditch effort. Doesn't anger make you lose focus? Sandra asks before pulling her martini's olive from its toothpick with her shiny red lips in a way that gives Carl butterflies. Well, you've got to keep it temporary, Carl clarifies. A quick flash of anger to reset yourself. Don't let it linger. Just enough to cancel out that nervousness and return you to the topic at hand. The Titans line up in shotgun with 5 wide receivers. The center snaps the ball to the quarterback, who steps up in the pocket and hurls a bullet to the slot receiver shooting down the middle of the field. The receiver catches the ball just beyond the first down marker, then breaks a tackle and sprints down the sideline before getting pushed out of bounds in Cowboys territory. What if you can't let go of the anger? Sandra asks. How can you turn it on and off so easily? Well, that's when you want to try picturing everyone naked, Carl replies. Sandra rolls her eyes and sips her martini. And it also helps if you picture them in a dunce cap holding a sparkler. Sandra nearly spits out her drink, but manages to suppress her laughter. The Titans are down to their last play. The quarterback dances around in the pocket and hurls up a pass toward the end zone where a wide receiver is blanketed by a defensive back who knocks down the ball. The receiver looks for a penalty flag, but it stays in the referee's pocket. The Cowboys celebrate their win. Tim chugs the last of his drink. Cowboys 30, Titans 24. Final. Just then, a voice on the intercom announces that Flight 1598 to Minneapolis will begin boarding shortly. Well, that's me, Sandra says, finishing the last of her drink. She pulls out a business card and hands it to Carl. If you think of any other presentation tips, or if you ever come to Minneapolis, give me a call. Carl takes the card, devastated to see her go. He watches her gracefully float through the terminal. Then he notices Tim morosely gathering his belongings, ready to make his way to the gate. Hey, pal, he says, sliding down the bar toward his fellow gambler. Tough break. How much did it cost you? Enough to hurt without you adding salt to the wounds, Tim replies with a glare. No, sorry, that's not what I was trying to do. Let me ask you, how much of a hurry are you in to get back to Minneapolis, eh? Let's say I buy that ticket from you. What? Tim asks, his eyebrows cocked in suspicion. No catch. I'll give you the cost of the ticket plus $500. What do you say? You're nuts, Tim says. I have to go. He attempts to brush past Carl, but Carl remains planted in his way. 1,000, Carl counters. He looks back as the bartender clears Sandra's glass, the outline of her red lipstick faintly visible on the rim. Tim finally realizes what's going on and smirks. His wife is already expecting him home late, so she'd barely even notice if he hung around and caught the next flight out. How do I even know there's a seat on a later plane tonight? Tim asks. Carl pulls up his phone and scans furiously. 3 seats still available on a Midwest Airlines flight leaving in 2 hours, Carl confirms. What do you say? Do we have a deal? Tim hesitates, then imagines going home to his wife and informing that he broke even at the casinos, that there's plenty of money for Noelle's new car seat and a new playpen and an expansive wardrobe of onesies. $2,000, Tim proposes, plus the ticket. Carl flashes a wide grin and holds out his hand. Deal. For a second, Tim wonders how much more he could have gotten out of Carl's deep pockets, but he's satisfied with the transaction. They exchange information. Carl transfers the money, wishes Tim luck, and skips off toward the gate. Carl wonders if he's just done something crazy, but he thinks about the way Sandra looked at him, the way the timbre of her voice seemed to burrow gently in his ears, and suddenly it feels like the best money he's spent in a long time. Work can take a back seat for the day. The presentation he was supposed to give in Seattle can be rescheduled. Carl has spent his life designing bridges, connecting parts of land and helping people travel from place to place to see one another. Yet, his own connections crumbled like the original bridge in Mortonville. Just like he did then, it's time to pick up the pieces and rebuild, to reimagine the structural integrity of his own life. For Tim, there's nothing left to do but order another beer and wait for the later plane. But he's content to have another couple hours to himself. His life is about to change forever with the stress, joy, and wonder of parenthood. So he'll take the opportunity to relax and kill some time in an airport bar. There's even another football game on. This time, however, he decides to just sit back and enjoy the matchup. He doesn't need to have a stake in every contest. And while he may not be any good at picking winners, Tim realizes that not everything is about winning and losing. Sometimes it's okay just to break even, and the rest will be what it will. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and I will be back with another video next week. Take care. Bye-bye.